This is one of the most common things I get. Customers tell me, oh, I know how to build the fence, I'm confident there, but I have no idea how to build or cut in the gate. So I'm going to take the mystery out of that particular step in today's video. Step one is going to be, since I have 8-foot rails, I'm going to measure how big they actually need to be and cut them all down. Your two 2x4s that make the top and middle rail, the cutoff ends, set those aside. We'll need those later. Next, I'm going to go ahead and hang the top and middle rails on the existing bracket positions because I took a look before I tore it down and these look like they're already good. We've got all those marked. Now I'm going to put a level from one to the next and see how far off we are because we're almost never perfect. Now I'm going to mark it. Do the same thing down here. Find plumb, line it up with the middle one. Right there. Now I'm going to double check by looking over and make sure that that line clears the rail bracket on either side. And it does. Same thing over here. And again, if you need to watch this step a couple times to comprehend what I'm doing and why here, totally understandable. A lot of people struggle with this particular step. You have to have 2 tandem pickets right where the hinge goes. Okay, I've brought over to this side everything I need before I close it off with pickets. My sawzall that I'll need is in the truck. Impact, pickets, battery charger that I'll need is also in the truck, so I have access to all that. Same with a 1/2-inch nut driver for the hinges and the latch. So, establish our picket height. So that side's pretty good with that lower mark. That side's pretty good. So I'm going to put a picket, I'm going to transfer that lower mark onto another picket, flushed up at the top. And I'm going to put a picket on either side and run a string between them. Got a little bit of concrete muffin top from the foundation here, so I'm going to choose to just clean cut 1 1/4 inch off the bottom of this one. Otherwise, same thing. Put it there. I like to have it not flush against the brick. That way you can get a rag back there or a piece of cardboard for staining purposes. We're going to put a picket on either side of our hinge mark, about 1/8 inch below the string. As you're doing this, look for any pickets that got a bad split or a warp in them. Might as well get them out of there right away. I always buy extra. Gonna match that same gap on bottom. So we're about 1/8 inch off with this one of our line. Same thing with the other one. Now we've got a slightly bigger gap than we normally would. That'll give it plenty of room for the hinges to articulate. I'm going to do the same thing over on the latch side. Again, coming like 1/8 inch off of our marker mark. This will be the latch gap. The gap for the latch. Now, if y'all noticed, we didn't have room for another picket here. So I'm going to show you what we'll do to resolve that later on. But for now, I'm going to leave this one here so the string stays taut. Like this particular video, share it, hit the subscribe button. It goes a long way and I appreciate it. That's all we need to do before we can cut the gate in functionally. We'll add the overlap pickets afterward. So what I'm going to do is here at our hinge gap, I'm going to cut the top and bottom. And over here, I'm going to cut the middle and bottom. So that once the hinges are on, I can just cut that top, cut that middle, and it'll swing open and we can start working on the latch. You take one of your hinges, and before you just rattle this through it, I like to establish pilot holes. Makes a big difference. Otherwise, you'll split these rear 2x4s and have to start all of this back over. That right there is level. So I'm going to cut through this middle rail that we left uncut. I'm not expecting this to be a real smooth open. Typically takes a little adjustment, but we'll get into that. I mean, real basically, we are able to open now where the rail overhangs the picket by about 1/8 inch right there. We'll cut all those down. Those cut-offs we had from earlier, this is where we need them. Make sure the pretty side faces out towards the customer. Put it there, and just mark the height of it. That one is. Do the same thing on the gate end of it. On the gate end, you'll see in a sec, but I'm going to actually recess this in almost 1/2 inch to clear the latch. But for now, we just need to mark how tall it will be. Looking at our mark we made on this side, I'm going to put a screw right here. One at the bottom on the right side, and then one right about in the middle, but kind of more to the left. Now on the gate, we're going to do the same thing, but each one's going to be about 1/2 inch further in. See, these ones are at the same height as these, but they're all 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch further into their picket. You'll see why. Making sure it's flush all the way up. You don't want it overhanging at all. Same thing on the gate here. But again, on the gate, instead of being perfectly flush with the edge of the picket, I'm going to come in about 1/2 inch. See that? Sometimes that's easier to start on the middle. And then I like to close it and make sure they're both straight up and down with each other. They are. So we're going to screw it. Now as you can see, we're kind of rubbing again. This is our gate, and it moves freely of our fence that runs long way. And we're losing a lot of strength because this one's solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the gate, and where it closes, I'm going to put in about a 3/8 piece of wood to shim it this way. And then I'm going to screw through these rails into the end grain of this one. But screwing into the end of a board isn't always the strongest, but you can help that by screwing at an angle so you're getting some of the cross grain of the wood. So we got a bigger gap than we need. We've overcorrected this gap now. We're now going to screw through these rails into the fence rails in the back. Now if we remove this block, that should keep us from ever really rubbing again. Nice and smooth again. See, we got our gap that we want. Now we'll move on to the latch. We've got our latch and our 2 latch bolts. And again, while not a bare necessity, you really want to put pilot holes in here with the T25. Otherwise, you will split this and cost yourself a lot of time. So I'm going to hold the latch up. We don't want to be too far close to the bottom. You know, right about there is good. I'm going to make 2 divots where our pilot holes will go. Just run a screw through there real quick. Again, this is just to give our 1/2 inch latch bolts a little bit of a channel in the cross grain of this treated 2x4. I'll switch back over to a 1/2 inch, grab our bolt, throw the impact on the ground, I guess. But we are going to rattle these 1/2 inch latch bolts in. Same on bottom. They got it locked, but I usually give it the 5-tap confirmation method. Now, get your Sharpie. You're going to close the gate. Come on. And with your Sharpie, mark on this picket on the edge about 3/8 inch above the top of the latch and 3/8 inch below the bottom. Now with my Sawzall, I'm going to cut on those 2 lines I just made. just to the depth of the 2x4. I've taken my Sawzall, cut into the side of the picket just to the depth of the 2x4. 4 separate cuts, so these 3 sections we're going to knock out. Now as you can see, we've created clearance for the latch. Perfect. Now we add our latch thumb. But again, I'm going to go ahead and put pilot holes in before I go installing any of those 1/2-inch wood legs. Slide our thumb in, right about where we want her. We're going to make a pilot hole. Pull him. Pull him. 1/2-inch nut driver. 1/2-inch bolt. Find your pilot hole. Now we really need this lock out of here. We're kind of screwed now. I suppose I didn't really think of that. But that's that. If we didn't have a padlock from the customer, we'd be nice and smoothly opening and closing this. Now we're back to just adding in our second course, our overlap pickets. I will mention to everyone that for the second course of pickets, I switched to 2-inch long screws instead of 1 3/4, just so they get a little better purchase on the rail. First thing I'm going to do is install 3 screws so that just about a 1/2 inch is hanging out of the board. That'll give the picket something to rest on. We're going to install our overlap picket. Always like to do this last one by starting with the middle screw. And then bring her over to plumb. And that's plumb right there. Again, 2-inch screws for this part. And on this side, it's pressing against those bumper screws we installed. Just creates a little bit better look. Again, that padlock's a real pain in the butt, but other than that, we're looking good here. I'm going to go ahead and finish screwing off this picket and this one over here. And just like that, this gate is done. I got to come back tomorrow and stain just the outside. I got to put the latch thumb on, but I got to wait for the customer's padlock key. But other than that, that's a solid board-on-board gate. Maybe got some people saying, Shreve, why don't you add a brace? Because we went ahead and screwed this together. And the screws, they act as more of a fastener than a pivot point. Like if you've got a fence guy who just tacks this together with a nail gun, make sure he's got a brace on it. We absolutely don't need one. I've been doing this 5 years. I've never once had a warranty call for a gate sagging, sticking, binding. You know, you'll find guys who are absolutely allergic to hard work and insist on just tacking this fence and gate together with a nail gun. Don't hire those guys. There's plenty of us out there that are willing to spend the time, do right by the customer, install it with screws, honor our work with a warranty. I mean, this is done. And that's a smooth gate. So again, I appreciate you watching, and if this video did anything for you, if this helped you get the job done, or even you just learned something you already knew but found a better way to do it from my trial and error, like the video, subscribe to my channel, watch some more of my videos. It's getting to the point where I probably got a dozen of them now. You might learn something. But either way, I appreciate you watching. See you on the next one.